Welcome to the Knowledge Seeker channel. The channel is dedicated to exploring critical issues in the world. As such, this channel is not afraid to challenge existing facts, beliefs, and practices in order to contribute to the advancement of knowledge in the world. Today's presentation is titled, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is responsible for hurting his own administration. He should act like a democratic president of a sovereign state. This is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the current president of Nigeria. The purpose of this presentation is to achieve two goals. One, to identify or point out the actions and behaviors of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that disconnect him from Nigerians, thereby negatively impacting the image of his administration. And two, to issue recommendations that could assist in enhancing the image of the administration. In order to accomplish the goals of the presentation, the following arguments are made. 1. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has spent 3 years of his administration campaigning for re-election instead of engaging in governance. 2. He does not feel comfortable communicating with Nigerians, hence rely excessively on spokespersons to communicate with them. 3. He has not been able to explain clearly his goals and objectives for being the president of Nigeria. 4. He is transactional, thereby treating Nigeria like a private property or a private company. 5. He finds it difficult to clearly inform Nigerians about his accomplishments as a president. And 6. Thus, he is responsible for creating his unpopularity among a large segment of the Nigerian population. Now, to see the actions and behaviors that negatively impacts the image of the president, please follow me on this list. 1. President Tinubu started campaigning for re-election on the day he was sworn in as president. The president spends his entire presidency campaigning for 2027 re-election instead of governing the country. While he has been busy campaigning for re-election, he fails to govern the country to create a positive impact on the citizens. Due to the failure to engage in governance, President Tinubu is not connected to Nigerians. Indeed, he is isolated from Nigerians. 2. President Tinubu does not feel comfortable communicating with Nigerians. The president seems to find it very difficult to communicate directly with the Nigerian people. Since he became president, he has never had a press conference where he allowed Nigerian journalists and citizens to ask him specific questions about his policies and decisions. Thus, he has not been able to explain to Nigerians candidly about his goals and how he is going to achieve them. Each time he appears in public, his body language shows clearly that he does not feel comfortable addressing Nigerians in a way that enables them to connect with him. 3. Instead of speaking directly to Nigerians, he prefers his spokespersons to speak for him. President Tinubu relies too much on his spokespersons to speak for him, instead of speaking directly to Nigerians on a regular basis. In a democracy, it is necessary for the political leader to address the citizens regularly so that they understand his plans and what he is doing to accomplish them. Spokespersons cannot speak like the president because they are always afraid not to say anything that might be construed as hurting the president's image. Therefore, the president hurts himself by using spokespersons too often. The spokespersons are always reactive and defensive. Instead of calmly explaining to Nigerians what is happening, they often attack the opposition for the slightest statement made against the president, instead of explaining to Nigerians why a particular policy is being initiated or adopted. The spokespersons are often too eager to protect and defend the president, thereby creating the impression that they are lying to cover up a situation. Please look at the news headline below. And the headline reads, "The presidency reacts to Peter Obi's request for the president to resign." Niger News, published June 22, 2026. The administration reacts by saying, "Your call for Tinubu's resignation is childish distraction." Presidency replies Peter Obi. That is a very bad way to communicate, because that kind of communication actually hurts the president. What the presidency would have done was to have calmly explained to Nigerians the reasons why President Tinubu cannot resign, taking into consideration the fact that President Tinubu had made similar suggestions to former President Goodluck Jonathan. 4. He finds it difficult to inform Nigerians about his accomplishments. Due to his unwillingness to address Nigerian people directly through holding press conferences and responding to questions regularly, the Tinubu administration finds it even difficult to clearly inform Nigerians about the achievements of the administration. There is no doubt that President Tinubu has achieved some goals, but the administration fails to market the goals so that Nigerians appreciate the successes. There are many examples to start from. Since Chief Tinubu became president, no university has shut down due to faculty and student protests and strikes. That is a great success. B, that is President Tinubu, instituted a student loan program to assist those students who need financial support to complete their education. That is also a great news. C, Chief Tinubu is the first president to attempt to construct a major road across the entire coastal regions of Nigeria through the Lagos-Calabar Road, even though he went about the project inappropriately by failing to go through the legislature. D, the governors are getting more palliatives from the federal government, even though they are not distributing them in a manner that reaches their citizens. E, President Tinubu has increased the means for collecting revenue through the Nigerian Customs and the Federal Internal Revenue Service. That is also a plus for the administration. 5. President Tinubu's failure to communicate directly to Nigerians means that he is not a Democrat. Although it has been widely reported that Chief Bola Ahmed Tinubu participated in the struggle to democratize Nigeria during the military era and was a member of the National Democratic Coalition known as NADECO. He does not act like a Democrat. Why? A. He does not want Nigerians to ask him questions. B. He expects Nigerians to accept whatever he says without asking questions. C. He finds it difficult to explain to Nigerians what he is doing to lead them. D. He acts like a private businessman rather than as a public official. 6. President Tinubu tilts toward authoritarianism. Since President Tinubu does not feel comfortable communicating directly to Nigerians, efforts are constantly being made to restrict freedom of expression and of the press. Increasingly, criticism of public officials is treated as a cyber crime. Several Nigerians have been arrested and detained for criticizing the president and some governors. The major news organizations are afraid of being penalized, so they shy away from reporting critical information about government performance. And there are many instances to cite from to show the trend. A. Proactive measures have been taken to prevent Nigerians from asking the president questions. B. Every constructive criticism is viewed as a threat to the administration. C. Every criticism is treated as a challenge by the opposition. D. Demonstrations and protests are suppressed and discouraged. E. People are detained under cybercrime and terrorism laws without informing their families about where they have been taken to. F. Other political parties are being destroyed to reduce opposition to the president's ambition to win re-election in 2027. G. Governors from the opposition parties are being persuaded and cajoled to jump ship and join the APC. H. The National Assembly has been captured, hence no longer exercises its primary function. I. The judiciary branch too has been captured by the administration and the politicians. And J. Therefore, the Tinubu administration is like a military regime. It is authoritarian. 7. President Tinubu feels more at ease with being around the ruling elites and not with the masses. President Tinubu seems to behave like a chief executive officer, that is, a CEO of a private corporation, where he feels more comfortable being around with the senior officials of the corporation rather than with the employees generally. Hence, he does not hesitate to reward the political elites, including governors, ministers, members of the National Assembly, the leaders of various political parties, and senior officers of the security forces with generous financial rewards, but keeps telling Nigerian masses to wait for the future. Please see the news headline below This is the news headline. Sahara Reporters, and the title is Exclusive. Tinubu government gives each governor joining APC 250 billion naira. Senator 1 billion naira. Rep member 500 million naira for defection. In other words, if any of these political elites or ruling elites decide to cross over from other political parties and join the APC, they receive this kind of free gifts from the president. On the other hand, he keeps telling the masses that they should wait until his economic plans bear fruits. So while he's rewarding the elites, he's not doing the same to the masses. 8. His effort to restrict free speech and press freedom affects his credibility as a Democrat. When President Goodluck Jonathan was in power, Chief Tinubu did the following. A. He vigorously opposed the removal of fuel subsidy by saying, and I quote, "I am not calling President Jonathan an evil man. I do not believe he is perverse. However, the economic ideas controlling him are so misguided that they have a perverse impact. Because he's slave to wrong-headed economics, the people will become enslaved to the greater misery. This crisis will bear his name and will be his legacy. The people now pay a steep tax for voting him into office. The removal of the subsidy is the Jonathan tax. This situation shows that ideas count more than personalities. People may occupy office, but how that person performs depends on the ideas that occupy his mind, and I unquote. On the first day he assumed office, he unceremoniously removed fuel subsidy and expected Nigerians not to criticize him the way he criticized President Jonathan. He justified the removal by saying, and I quote, "You have paid attention to the subsidy removal. Why should we, in good heart and sense, feed smugglers and be Father Christmas to neighboring countries, even though they say not every day is Christmas? The elephant that was going to bring Nigeria to its knees is the subsidy," and I unquote. A country that cannot pay salaries and we say we have potential to encourage ourselves, I think we did the right thing. President Tinubu and Major General Muhammadu Buhari actively supported protesting against President Jonathan when President Jonathan wanted to remove fuel subsidy, and now he turned around 360 degrees to do the same thing and expect Nigerians just to follow him and accept his turnaround without a good explanation. This is President Tinubu leading a subsidy protest against President Jonathan when he was a leader of the APC political party. Today, he wouldn't want Nigerians to protest against him. Francis Ugu reported, and I quote, President Bola Tinubu's old post on X, formerly known as Twitter, favoring protest against former President Goodluck Jonathan's administration has surfaced online, and I unquote. President Tinubu went as far as to advise the police not to attack protesters by saying, and I quote, Police, do not attack protesters. Your children are involved. Your lives are involved. Your children's future lies here, and I unquote. Now that Chief Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the president, every tactic is being deployed to prevent Nigerians from demonstrating and protesting against his administration's policies and decisions. In fact, demonstrators and protesters are treated harshly by the police. Some are detained for days and weeks without any justifiable reason. 9. President Tinubu is tribalistic in the appointment of people into high-level national government positions. Perhaps following the footsteps of former President Muhammadu Buhari, President Tinubu mostly hires members of his ethnic group to head critical financial, economic, and security positions. He is doing so in a country with more than 300 ethnic groups with a population of more than 230 million people. The Southeast, South-South, and the Middle Belt are ignored in most high-level national appointments under President Tinubu. Even Yoruba leaders have criticized his tribalistic appointments. Seye Olumide of The Guardian reported, and I quote, the Pa Ayo Adebanjo-led Pan-Yoruba socio-cultural group Afenifere on Friday cautioned President Bola Tinubu over his bias and preference for Yoruba in federal appointments. The group warned that such development could threaten inter-ethnic relationships and peaceful coexistence in Nigeria. A statement made available to the media and endorsed by the Adebanjo and the National Publicity Secretary, Prince Justice Faloye, condemned the development, just as they insisted that President Tinubu should correct the anomaly, and I unquote. Other critics too have commented about the undue tilt in favor of Yorubas in federal government appointments. However, the administration denies the allegation by insisting that Tinubu's appointments have been balanced, contrary to what the critics are saying. It is obvious that President Tinubu favors members of his ethnic group the most. In particular, he favors those from Lagos and not necessarily from other parts of the Southwest. 10. Tinubu's foreign policy is neo-colonialistic. Either by omission or intentional, President Tinubu tends to create the impression that he wants to take Nigeria backward by acting like a neo-colonialist and or an agent of foreign powers. And there are many instances to cite from. A, when Francophone African countries are working assiduously to cut off the colonial umbilical cord from France, President Tinubu wants Nigeria to replace them by placing Nigeria under the influence of France. B. He wanted to send Nigerian troops to attack or invade Niger Republic over the military takeover of power at the behest of foreign powers. C. He signed a cooperative tax relationship with France so that the country can assist in streamlining Nigeria's tax system. D. Is allowing foreign military forces to come into Nigeria to help him instead of investing in the enhancement of the Nigerian armed forces. After 60 years of independence, it is strange for a sovereign state to sign a bilateral deal with another sovereign state to assist it in streamlining its digital tax system. The deal ignores the danger of opening a country's critical economic and financial assets to a foreign power at a time many African countries are breaking their economic and financial ties with France. The deal shows that Nigeria does not have an effective national security system to prevent such a relationship from taking place. Then, a Nigerian military plane mysteriously landed in Burkina Faso without a convincing explanation by the Tinubu administration as to what the plane was doing in that country. It was a great embarrassment for Nigeria. Even though President Tinubu is the head of state of a sovereign state, he acts like a mere public figure by traveling to France regularly on what is now regarded as a working visit. How can a head of state of a sovereign state travel to a particular country regularly as if he is not aware of the diplomatic implications of leaving his own country every 3 or 4 weeks? He has contributed to the weakening of the economic community of West African states because the organization seems increasingly to be serving foreign interests rather than those of West Africa. 11. President Tinubu's attitude toward insecurity in Nigeria. President Tinubu seems absent-minded and finds it difficult to manage insecurity in the country. The kidnappings and killings by horsemen, bandits, kidnappers, and jihadists are getting out of control, yet the president seems less concerned, apart from issuing statements of sympathy and promising to go after the perpetrators. So many soldiers have been killed. Some senior military officers have been kidnapped or killed. The most recent one is retired Brigadier General Rabe Abubakar. It should be recalled that Brigadier General Musa Uba was killed in November 2025 by the Islamic State of West Africa Province, that is ISWAP. In April 2026, Brigadier General Hosseini Omo Brahma was killed in an ambush. Moreover, so many lieutenant colonels and majors have been killed. Then not to forget that thousands of Nigerian civilians have been killed. Likewise, 3.7 million Nigerians have been driven away from their communities and now live in 3,900 refugee camps, while the communities have been taken over. It should be noted that if armed youths in the southeast or south-south were to kill any senior military officer in Nigeria, the Nigerian government would have sent in a whole unit of the Nigerian army to go and teach the community a lesson. But when it happens in the Islamic North, the military does not do anything about it. It is accepted as being normal. Can you imagine if these brigadiers were killed in the southeast or in the south-south? You can imagine what Nigerian soldiers would have done by now to those communities. Despite the horror that has befallen the country, the president and the politicians seem less concerned and are busy campaigning for re-election or running for elective offices. The Nigerian armed forces seemed overwhelmed and incapable of defending the territorial integrity of Nigeria. Thus, President Tinubu has not demonstrated that Nigeria is a sovereign state and he can ensure the territorial integrity of the state. Meanwhile, the jihadists are spreading southwards as they rampage through Benue, Kogi, Kwara, Oyo, Ekiti, Enugu, Zamfara, and so forth. The school children and teachers abducted in Oyo State are still under captivity, and the president seems helpless. The Nigerian Army and the Nigerian Air Force find it difficult to integrate their anti-terrorist operations. On numerous occasions, Nigerian troops have been ambushed by jihadists, and the Air Force never responded to safeguard the troops as they struggled to escape from the attackers. By now, the Nigerian Army is supposed to have its own rapid response air wing to render quick and emergency response to troops under ambush instead of waiting for the Nigerian Air Force. By now, the Nigerian Army and the Air Force supposed to have drones to man the skies and track abductors in their locations for surgical military operations, but they choose to fight as if they are still operating in the 20th century. Sometimes they behave as if they don't want to fight at all. It is obvious that the Nigerian Army and the Nigerian Air Force are not cooperating effectively to carry the war to the terrorists. The top leaders of the armed forces are too political in their expressions, thereby creating the impression that they are politicians in military uniforms. They are prosecuting the war as if they are not interested. President Tinubu, for whatever reason, fails to act like the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Nigeria. The only time the Nigerian Army, Navy, and the Nigerian Police Force act like security forces is when they deploy to the southeast and the south-south. These two regions are always treated like enemy territories, but if anything happens in the Islamic North, the military commanders lay off their arms as if they do not see, they do not hear. But if it is in the southeast, south-south, they are going with full force to retaliate. Here you have Lieutenant General Y.D. Shaibu on the left. Is the Chief of Army Staff of the Nigerian Army. And on the right, you have Air Marshal Sunday K. Aneke. Is the head of the Nigerian Air Force. But it is apparent that the Air Force and the Army are not coordinating their services together. 12. Chief Tinubu advised President Goodluck Jonathan to resign for failing as a president. As a member of the opposition party, Chief Bola Ahmed Tinubu called President Goodluck Jonathan to resign following the abduction of the Chibok girls in 2014 and other issues. Nanji Nandang Venli quoted Chief Tinubu, and I quote, if it is happening in these other states for some of these years and you have not gathered enough intelligence to nip it in the bud, you have failed. Please resign. You cannot continue to blame one IGP or the other. And I unquote. Thus, he is now haunted by the things he said because Nigerians now expect him to carry out what he suggested to President Jonathan. Then Chief Tinubu castigated President Jonathan for failing to control insecurity by saying, and I quote, "I saw the sea of refugees caused by the Boko Haram insurgents and the lies coming from Jonathan's administration. They have exhibited failure, lack of capacity, vision, and creativity. The lies of yesterday are what they repeat today and are what they will repeat tomorrow. They are lying to you." And I unquote. Well, since Chief Tinubu became president, the abduction of students and Nigerians in general has quadrupled. So many Nigerians now want him to resign based on the suggestion he made to President Jonathan. Mr. P2B has joined the chorus by demanding President Tinubu's resignation. So Nigerians are waiting and watching to see whether President Tinubu will do what he suggested to President Jonathan. 13. President Tinubu deals with corruption the way he deals with security. He does not seem to care about fighting corruption, even though he speaks about it. He keeps appointing individuals who have corruption cases with the EFCC as high government officials. He keeps awarding major infrastructural development contracts to his friend without seeking legislative authorization. He does not want to compel the leadership of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation to go to the National Assembly and explain the whereabouts of 210 billion naira that is unaccounted for. A scandal is brewing over the Presidential Foreign Intervention Promotion Council. The Chief of Staff to the President said that this council does not exist, therefore it is fake. And the director of the council indicated that yes, indeed, the council or the agency exists and is recognized by the federal government. It has its own budget item on the national budget. So, Mr. President has to conduct an investigation on this matter. As you can see, that is, Tinubu's administration is surrounded by scandals involving corruption. His administration does not comply with budget appropriation procedures, hence engage in budget rollovers in 2024 and 2025 in capital project allocations. He keeps borrowing loans uncontrollably from foreign and domestic sources. Even the World Bank has raised alarm over his borrowings. There are new plans to spend about 2 or 3 billion American dollars on refurbishing refineries that have been repaired repeatedly with billions of dollars, and they still do not work. While Dangote refinery can provide enough refined petroleum, the country under President Tinubu continues to import refined petroleum. And the question is, why? 14. He finds it difficult to empathize with Nigerians over economic hardship. Despite the fact that some of his economic policies have contributed to economic hardship and pushed millions of Nigerians into poverty, his body language does not show much concern about it. As a result, he seems to pay greater attention to foreign economic advice instead of finding ways to ameliorate economic hardship that the All Progressives Congress created, starting from President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. Despite the challenges Nigerians face, he wants to increase taxes on every economic activity, thereby further adding to the difficulty that Nigerians face. Each time Nigerians raise the issue of economic hardship, he points to statistical reports to show improvement in the economy without acknowledging that Nigerians are suffering. He rewards the ruling elites generously with financial gifts without considering the plight of the masses. He keeps telling the masses to wait until the economy improves, but he does not tell the ruling elites to wait until the economy improves. Why does he favor the ruling elites and then discriminate against the masses? Only him can explain that. 15. He keeps saying that palliatives have been sent to the governors to give to their citizens. The president has repeatedly stated that he allocated large sums of money as palliatives to the governors to distribute to the citizens without verifying whether the palliatives actually got to the citizens. As the president of Nigeria, it is his responsibility to ensure that federal allocations on palliatives go directly to the citizens and not through the governors. Why? Because the federal government is supposed to have developed a data bank of Nigerians through the national identification numbers and use the information to send palliatives directly to individuals. This is what most countries do. A federal program for Nigerians should go directly to the citizens. On the issue of verifying whether the palliatives really get to Nigerian citizens, the president seems to say that the responsibility for distributing the palliatives lies with the governors and not with him. He stated bluntly, and I quote, "It is unheard of that in a constitutional democracy, a president will sit here and give orders to states. I can only appeal to them to implement. The people reside in the states, and if the governor is not doing well, the people must vote them out," and I unquote. Of course, the president should know that the Nigerian political system does not empower the citizens to do anything, since most elections are rigged in favor of choosing political candidates. Hence, quite contrary, the president has a responsibility to monitor federal expenditures by sending the Auditor General to audit the funds allocated by the federal government to Nigerian citizens. He is the Commander-in-Chief of Nigeria and is responsible for the welfare and security of all Nigerians. Palliatives come under national security, since hunger is a national problem. Therefore, the president cannot shift the burden of ascertaining whether the governors distribute the palliatives to the citizens. He should send federal auditors to audit all funds allocated as palliatives in order to ensure that the funds get to the citizens. Again, food is a national security matter, and the president is totally responsible for ensuring that federal palliatives get to the citizens directly and not through the governors. It is the responsibility of the federal ministry that disburses the funds to monitor whether the citizens receives the funds or not. It is the responsibility of the federal government to prosecute any governor that violates the law concerning the distribution of palliatives, and not citizens who have been rendered politically powerless through rigged elections. 16. President Tinubu promised to fix the energy problem in Nigeria. Indeed, President Tinubu promised to fix the electrical energy problem in the country. He went as far as to say that if he fails to fix the problem, Nigerians should not re-elect him. He stated prior to the 2023 presidential election, and I quote, "Whichever way, by all means necessary, you will have electricity and you will not pay for estimated bill anymore." A promise made will be a promise kept. If I don't keep the promise and I come for a second time, don't vote for me unless I give you adequate reasons why I couldn't deliver. I unquote. He has not resolved the energy problem, and the electricity situation is actually getting worse than when President Buhari was in power. While the electricity problem has not been ameliorated, electric bills keep going up. 17. President Tinubu wants universities to generate internal income. He wants university officials to increase internally generated revenue, that is IGR. Basically, is indirectly eliminating public higher education by ordering universities to generate internal revenue. This means that they should increase fees on various services provided to students. This further means that students would have to pay higher fees, thereby turning public institutions into private institutions. If fees for various services are increased, some students might be forced to quit school if they cannot meet the financial charges. The demand for universities to generate internal revenue seems to come from the playbook of the IMF, which often encourages developing countries to cut subsidies and other public assistance programs and replace them with privatization schemes. Thus, President Tinubu seems to be an ardent believer in IMF economic management style, which often punishes the masses and rewards the very rich. 18. President Tinubu creates doubt about his origin. President Tinubu is the only Nigerian leader who finds it difficult to explain where he comes from. It is generally known that he moved to Lagos, but there has never been any report of him visiting his village or community of origin in Yoruba land. He has never been openly visited by members of his family, village, and community in Aso Rock. And there are many instances to cite from to show that he does not show or demonstrate where he comes from. A. It is clearly known that President Muhammadu Buhari is a son of Daura in Katsina State. B. Nigerians know that President Goodluck Jonathan is a son of Otueke in Bayelsa State. C. Nigerians know that President Umaru Yar'Adua is from Katsina in Katsina State. D. Nigerians know that President Olusegun Obasanjo comes from Ibogun, Olaogun in Ogun State. The question is, where does President Bola Tinubu comes from? Some say he's a Yoruba, some say he's from Guinea, but grew up in Nigeria. He has both Nigerian and Guinean citizenship. So the president can help himself on this by clearly explaining to the Nigerian people where he comes from. In conclusion, the following observations and summaries are made. 1. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is responsible for demarcating himself through his policies, actions, and behaviors. 2. He finds it very difficult to communicate and interact with Nigerians the way a democratic president is supposed to do. 3. He rarely holds press conferences and allows journalists and citizens to ask him questions. 4. He always reads from pre-recorded speeches, thereby making him to look mechanical and/or robotic. 5. He's overprotected by his security personnel as if he's a military dictator that is afraid of the citizens. 6. He relies too much on spokespersons and feels uncomfortable interacting with Nigerians, apart from interacting with some members of the ruling elite. Some of his spokespersons have credibility problems with Nigerians because they criticize him while they were in other political parties before they cross over to join the APC. 7. He should personally be involved to ensure that military allocations are duly spent for what they were appropriated for. 8. The Nigerian military needs to move into the 21st century and use aerial platforms like drones to monitor and gather intelligence and take the war to the terrorists like a military force. Now, to solve some of the problems identified, the following recommendations are made. 1. President Tinubu should proudly speak to Nigerians directly and inform them about his tangible accomplishments. Please, sir, tell Nigerians what you have done for them proudly. 2. Please, sir, hold press conferences regularly and inform Nigerians about your policies and decisions in order to persuade them to support you. 3. Respond to questions by speaking directly and relying less on your spokespersons. 4. Stop traveling incessantly to France and other countries as if you are a tourist rather than the head of state of a sovereign state. 5. Order the Nigerian armed forces to mobilize fully and fight terrorists to protect Nigerians. You are the commander-in-chief of the Nigerian armed forces. Please, President Tinubu, exercise your constitutional authority to protect Nigerians. And 6. Stop incessant borrowing and fight corruption to recover pilfered funds that run into trillions of naira. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation. It is long and yet informative. Please subscribe to the channel and listen to other captivating presentations on various topics under the Knowledge Seeker channel. Again, thank you. Do not fail to subscribe.